Okay. So welcome to my channel. It's No Ticket Backwards is the name I have for it right now. I don't know, one day I might change it, but here we are. Um, well, I want to share my story today. I've done interviews in the past, and I was so inspired by those interviews, and they're still available. So if you want to see them, some really pivotal changes in life for people. Um, there's someone who was in prison for over 20 years, and he got out and is building a very successful personal training business. There is someone else who is a mother and a wife first and foremost, and she loves her family dearly, and she has an enormous reach of influence for building her own little media empire. I don't know if she would word it that way, but I'm going to because I can and it's accurate. So there's some really powerful stories that I've already shared, and I have more that are lined up to be shared. And there's a lot going on in the world right now, and there's a lot of disruption. And this is meant to be a point of inspiration so that when it feels like everything has fallen apart and you are stuck and life is as you know it is ending and life as you don't know it is beginning, what do you do? What do you do with those transitions? They're not always easy. Sometimes people jump in and it's just amazing what they're able to do. Like, I have seen people who lost everything and then shifted and they're making huge amounts of money and like within weeks. Like, that does happen. But for every one of those people, there has to be dozens, maybe hundreds of people who get lost in the changes of life. And that's what I want to talk about. So, I'm going to share my own story. Um, And I really Puerto Rico was a changing point for me. I went on a trip to Puerto Rico. Um, at the time I was doing a lot of writing, and I had a novel that I had in me that I wanted to write, and I had spent time during COVID plotting out this novel. And I was like, this is the seminal work of my life. This is my magnum opus or whatever that, like the masterpiece I'm going to create. And I was ready to write it. So I was actually doing a house sit in Puerto Rico where I planned to do the writing. And as fate would have it, my story, the way I knew it, wasn't going to be written. There was a series of events that completely shifted how I saw the story going. And in my world, I really believe in a muse. Like, I have a muse. And the muse showed up and was like, "No, this is not the story. This is not your masterpiece. This is not your magnus opus thing, the magnum opus." Like, I don't know words. I know words. There's other things. Sometimes I just forget words, okay? There's a lot. There's hundreds of thousands of words, and some of them are floating in my head, and some of them are on hiatus. What do you do? Anyhow, so my masterpiece, I can manage. Isn't this. Like, what you think it is isn't that. It's beyond. You need to push yourself and your story and your understanding of how life works because this isn't it. And there was an aspect in my story, like if you were to sit down and write it, like read it in English class and deconstruct it, one of the underlying themes was that stuff can hit you. It was like when stuff happens, it can change you and there's no going back. It was almost like a resignation to being a victim. I would not have worded it at the time, that's not how I would have worded it. Because the psychic toll that trauma can take can feel insurmountable. Like, it honestly can. And I am so tired of cultural narratives that dismiss that experience or don't allow the space for that experience. Like, some things that happen really take a huge toll, and if you don't know how to navigate it, like, emotionally, mentally, like, if you don't have that resilience, and so many of us don't, it's not like learning to read. Like, you can be literate for all the books in the world and feel completely emotionally illiterate, especially with dealing and navigating with your own feelings, and that's me, like, 100%. I have very intense emotions, and sometimes I feel like those emotions get the best of me, and I don't know how to navigate them. And so it just feels like I'm breaking in 1,000 different places. So I'm gonna put some context on that now. I'm gonna share my story. Um, a little bits of it. Like, my story just feels so big. Sometimes I'm like, "How would I tell it in an hour?" Or whatever, however long this ends up being. So when I was little, I remember my dad telling my brother, "You go to you do really well in school, so you can get scholarships, and you can go to college on scholarships, and then after you graduate from college, you can get a good job." And I think that was a really common story, like the boomers, Gen X, elder millennials, maybe even younger millennials, and maybe that story is still being shared, like, get a college education and a good job, and that will secure your future. And so I did those things. I was a top performing student. I did get a scholarship, got a good job. I was so unsatisfied. And so I went through several jobs. I went through several careers. I finally ended up in the financial industry. I was so unsatisfied. My emotional the emotional part of me was just like, I was having existential crisis in my mental health was just I wanted to end everything, and I thought maybe if I went to school, because like, that was the story, right? Like, go to school, get an education, and then so what if I went back to school, I got more education? Maybe that would do the trick. It didn't do the trick. The disappointment that I had from realizing I had pushed myself to my limits and I was breaking for nothing, the disappointment was heartbreaking. It really just I just wanted to give up on life. Like, I absolutely was just ready to not try to do anything. Like, all my efforts felt like they didn't matter, so why keep trying for something that doesn't matter? And along with that, I was very goal driven. Like, the only way I knew to measure the value of my life was through my goals. Like, I had to accomplish something. In my mind, it was like I had to accomplish something to prove my value. That was a very big belief system that I had, and I had a lot of, like, limiting beliefs that back that up. Um, it's kinda weird to look back at because I've worked so hard to shift out of that. And what I really focus on now more is, like, loving myself unconditionally, finding validation within myself, and actually pursuing my God-given passions. Not just what I think is the good thing to do, like, not just trying to perform some script of how to be successful, but to find what I care about and pursue that and find success in the things that fill my heart with joy. Um, that's been a huge shift. It's been huge. So I wanted to like, I'm sharing this as background information because I wanted to share about what happened in Puerto Rico. So I had this story and it was all planned out. And I think I will end up writing the story with a different ending so that the theme is different. Um, but what I realized was that, like, when something feels like it breaks you, like when you feel like you're a victim of circumstance, not negating how painful that break can actually be, because it can. Like, it's absolutely endlessly painful in certain situations. I would never minimize that. And there's more to the story. Like, it can be big and full and painful and full of just heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, wanting your world to end grief, and that doesn't have to be the end of the story. This is, like, really personal to me. There's a place where you can rebuild, and, um, my life went through a bunch of unexpected circumstances. I definitely helped create them, but I wasn't planning to live through them. And after that, I tried starting over dozens of times. That's not an exaggeration. Like, I tried dozens of times to get my feet back on the ground, to reroute, to find a place that felt like home, to establish a new career, like, all of it. Like, just trying to get some kind of traction into adulting. And I failed time and time and time and time again. And it wasn't really a surprise because it was like the stories behind everything were the same. Like, there's that cliche or saying that the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And, like, I knew I was doing that. Like, so much of this stuff was like I was like, "This is just more of the same, more of the same, more of the same." And it wasn't for a lack of desire to change, it was a lack of knowing what else was possible. Like, I knew that I was repeating broken patterns, and I didn't have anything else to try. I I was like, "Yeah, this is the definition of insanity. I am driving myself crazy, and I have no idea how to not do it." There's, like, it's like when you have option A and option B, but when all you've ever known was A and you tried B, but your A was so overwhelmingly built into your mind that B turned to A, and then you were in A again, and that's kind of where everything was. So, just as an example, like, I had my own condo, I'd purchased my own condo, I was working in the financial industry, um, I was getting my master's degree, and then I just wanted everything to end, and I ended up with medical bills that bankrupted me. I was unable to maintain my career because the bankruptcy and the financial industry I was in were incompatible. And the amount of heartbreak and shame, I felt so much shame about that because I took such pride in my career. That was probably the hardest, like, emotion to navigate. There were parts of the situation that felt harder to navigate, but, like, internally, introspectively, it was the complete crumbling of all sense of pride I had ever been able to muster together that I thought was my end like, that I thought would do me in. The real thing with that, though, that my confidence was built on such a weak foundation, such a weak basis, but it took a long time for me to, like, assess that and begin rebuilding. So I lost my in the foreclosure, I was able to work out a mortgage reconstruction, so I had my condo, but I was so burnt out, and there was, like, a moment when I got to make a choice, and it was like I didn't necessarily know the extent of of what would come from that choice because we often don't, but I basically decided to let my house go, and I spent years going from place to place. So, like, I would rent a room, I would couch surf, I did house sittings, I stayed with friends, I stayed with family, um, for, like, 10 years. So, I've never had to sleep on the street, but I haven't had, like, housing security like I did when I owned my own condo. And sometimes it was really brutal, and other times it was such a fun adventure. Like, it was such a fun story to experience and, like, the things I've seen. And it was also heartbreaking because I'm, like, in my 30s, now I'm in my 40s, late 40s, and I feel like I don't ha like, I'm so far behind, I haven't accomplished the things. And then I breathe because all I can do is the best from day to day today. Um, so every time I tried to get my feet down and start a new career, a new job in a new place, something would happen and it would just, like, be swept out from under me, and even the way I'm talking about it, it makes it feel like I'm a passive participant. And I actually I was because I didn't try to really, it's almost like my willpower was just blew out, like, burned out itself, and I felt very much like an object drifting through life. It's taken a lot. It's taken so much for me to rebuild that sense of, like, gut-centeredness where I am like, "No, I am the captain of my fate." Wait, how does that go? It's from Invictus. It's a poem by some guy. Why can I never Henley? Ooh, might need to Google that later. But Invictus, that part I remember, and it's, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." And I say that to myself a lot. Nelson Mandela, when he was in prison during apartheid in South Africa, to keep his heart from going bitter, he would repeat that poem to himself over and over and over again. And there like, I don't remember the whole poem. I used to have it memorized, but I do remember the "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." And I do still remind myself of that. Um, so, like, if you feel like you're a victim and you can't move out of that place, to moving to a place where you feel like you are the undisputed and qualified and confident master and captain of your life and your soul. Like, how do you fill that gap? Because that's where real resiliency lives. Um, and that's kind of the exploration that I want this channel to be. It's like I've learned a lot, but it's so cram packed in my head that I'm not even sure like what exactly to share. I just know like this is from my heart. This is a very heart prompted. I want to share. I want to help people. I want to help people who might have been where I was 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 3 years ago. And if I could just like bridge a little bit of that, like wormhole so it doesn't have to be such an excruciating struggle. That's so worth my time, it's worth my life energy. Um, so when I was in Puerto Rico and I had this whole outline of a novel, it was actually the potential of more than one novel. Like it was a pretty detailed outline with more than one location. And the resignation that basically like you just do the best you can and live feeling even though some part of you might feel broken. And what really came through, I just remember like, so I told you how I have the muse, right? So the muse is like inspiration and it communicates internally with me, but I don't feel like it belongs to me. I don't feel like it's me. Like it's not a part of my identity. It feels outside, but it's definitely inspiration and it communicates internally. And I just remember when I landed in San Juan, I had this feeling of, like, this it was almost like a ghost, but that's the muse, like, it's like this creative phantom almost, and it was this feeling of wholeness, and who maybe I could have been in another timeline of a parallel dimension, like, not but it didn't feel like me, it was like this sense of inspiration, like, who I could have been in different choices, or, like, the archetype that I could have been if life would have flowed differently. And I remember, like, the greenery, and it was so rich and so beautiful, and the flowers were just and the coqui frogs, and it just felt so magical, and there was this feeling of this being, like a character in a story that I was chasing, and the word inaccessible kept coming to me, and I was like, "This feels inaccessible. How do I gain access to this? Like, where's the gate?" I mean, it's one thing if there's a gate and a gatekeeper and you can move through the gate, but, like, it felt like there was no doorway, there was no threshold to pass through to be able to move into this higher sense of things. And that's when I resolved, maybe that was the story. And I didn't expect it's what like, I have creative inspiration that I follow a lot. I didn't expect it to consume my life, and yet there is no part of my life that is untouched by the inspiration that came. I haven't written the novel. I started writing it ended up being very different than what I intended. I love the writing that I did. but it doesn't feel like it's where I was ready to go. It's like I had to grow and have human experiences to be able to write about them. But then it wasn't just writing. It's like living and breathing. It's my heart learning to like trust and reopen. It's my creative energy wanting to flow at full capacity instead of this narrow channel that I've allowed it. It's living with more life force energy and just like bigger and fuller and more completely allowing myself to be the best version of me instead of just aligning to and surrendering or more resigning resignation than surrender, more resignation, resigning myself to making do with a like a pulled back version of that. So I feel like revisiting the idea of, like insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Sometimes that's all you can do. And the real insanity comes when you just completely give up. As long as you stay treading water, even if you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're still in a current that can take you somewhere. But it's like if you just give up and withdraw, that's that was where the danger really entered. But even that's not the end either. So those are my thoughts on starting over. I'm sure I have more to say. That's what's coming through at the moment. That's what's on my heart to be shared. So that's what I'm sharing. So yeah, it's exciting to me to like finally get in front of the camera solo and really share what's on my heart. So I'm sure I will do more of this. It's a new practice. So thanks for joining and watching, and you can subscribe and like the buttons. Like I think when you do YouTube, you're supposed to tell people to subscribe. So if you would like more inspirational content or creative content, you should definitely subscribe.